Welcome to this Bull Talk on Georgia's energy sector development in short and long-term perspective. I'm director of the South Caucasus office of Heinrich Böll Foundation, which is the green political foundation, a German green political foundation. Georgia is implementing an ambitious reforms in the environmental sector and in energy in the context of its association agreement with the EU and the European Energy Community. I just was looking into several documents assessing this process of adaptation of a new energy policy. And if you look into the International Energy Agency assessment, you can see that they recognize progress in energy transformation of Georgia, but observe also several challenges. I just want to very short to name these challenges. The first point is there is a need to develop a long-term strategy, energy strategy based on solid analysis, and very important to create correct implementation mechanism. Second is ensure that energy strategy is in line with Georgia's development goals, like strategic climate change documents, sustainable development strategies, economic, environmental, and social policy. Improve collection of national energy statistics. This is the third point. The fourth point is improve analytical capacity for energy market and policy analysis, and strengthen also cooperation with academia in these fields. Fifth is adopt legislation on electricity and gas market to promote energy efficiency and renewable energy. Sixth is further development a free and competitive energy market. Seventh, while gradually phase out gas and electricity subsidies, protect vulnerable groups, and finally support transparency and control in the gas sector. That means International Energy Agency identifies a lack of a comprehensive energy strategy, lack of analysis and monitoring and implementation, I think, which is crucial for the implementation of a successful energy strategy. And I would also say these are several factors which can also stand in conflict with each other. So it's not always so easy to implement all of these factors. I would like to introduce our today's speakers who will look into this field from different perspectives. I'm very happy to have here Viola von Cramon, who is member of the European Parliament, Alliance 19 and the Greens. We have David Tvalabeishvili, the Deputy Minister, Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development, who also has a strong background in this field. And we have Manana Kochladze, Director of Green Alternative, who is a watchdog, non-governmental organization working in the environmental field. Each of you will have maximum 10 minutes for an initial statement. I will ask then an additional question, and then we would open up for the Facebook visitors, but also for those who are here in the room for Q&As. And those who are here in the Zoom room, you can ask via the chat, but it's also possible then for those who are on Facebook to ask via Facebook questions. My colleagues will read out these questions, and we will have like 2 or maybe 3 rounds of Q&As. So coming to the first presentation, so looking into the main directions of state policy in the energy sector in Georgia from 2015, the to-do list is pretty ambitious. I just name a few of them: diversification of supply to improve energy security, approximation of Georgia with EU's energy acquis, develop and implement an integrated approach to energy efficiency, taking into consideration environmental components in the implementation of energy projects. As I understand, there will be soon a new strategy published. And my first question therefore goes to the Deputy Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development. So what has been implemented, and where do you see the main challenges also in this implementation? What is realistic? Is it not also a quite ambitious plan? where I would ask, so what is realistic also from your perspective to implement in the energy field? Please.
Thank you, Stefan. So I have 10 minutes, right?
You have 10 minutes, yes. And then there will be another question, and you can also add something in the Q&A, yeah?
Okay, so I will use first this 10 minutes and then listen other speakers as well. So I'll speak in Georgian because the majority of our listeners are Georgian, and we agreed with Taco that I'll be speaking in Georgian. Thank you. So answering your question, so sorry, I have to switch to Georgian.
First of all, I would like to answer your question of Stefan Meister. In this case, I can make a declaration that the perspective for development of energo sector in Georgia is in reforming of our sector in full concordance with the EU acquis and association agreement. And this is not just a statement. We are doing harmonization of the sector, and we know our obligations, and we will be able to attract investments to Georgia if we do so, to establish transparent markets, and to support competition in the energy sector. I would like to agree with you, Dr. Meister, that we have ambitious reforms, and currently we are working on the reforms in the energy sector, and the reforms are comprehensive and holistic and large scale. And of course, I don't have enough time actually to list all details of what reforms we are implementing, but I would like to mention several directions. Last year, we have adopted several 4 or 5 laws that define and create ground for the Georgian energy sector. And first of all, according to those laws, we need to establish organized energy markets for energy trade and for gas trade, natural gas trade. We need to establish energy exchange for organized trade through this platform, and generation objects and consumers will have an opportunity to trade, to buy and sell energy. Also, organized market will cover the balance market, the mutual trade market. A lot has been done in this direction. We have adopted market trading rules. We are testing these platforms at the moment, and just in a few months, I hope we will be ready to start and to use the exchange. And 1 year later, we will do the same for the natural gas. In other directions, we also have reforms. One of the key directions we are working at is to do unbundling and generation, distribution, and supply. These should be unbundled and independent, and things have been done here. But from the 1st of July this year, the distribution and supply sector will be officially unbundled. And there is another direction which is also very important. The number of direct users that will be buy and sell at the exchange, the number will increase according to our plan. We have 19 users already, and from the 1st of July, 23 more will join, and we will have more than 100 very soon. We are deregulating HPPs, and in by 2027 we will deregulate all HPPs. They will be freely trading in the market. And you mentioned it correctly. According to the law, according to the new law on energy, we are developing energy policy document, and this document is the frame for primary and secondary legislation action plans, and this will be the vision. This will be the strategic vision of the state on its energy policy, its priorities, and plan activities. This document at the level of concept is ready, and part of this document is very important. There is also another document, which is energy and climate management, integrated management, NECD, and it is a very important and noteworthy document. There is a list of measures that the country has to implement during the next 10 years. It covers 5 key components. This is decarbonization that covers 41 different measures to be implemented. Second component is energy security. We have 17 activities to implement. Energy efficiency with its 27 activities. Fourth is increase of capacity and research, and development of energy market that I have partially covered already just a few moments ago. So this is the document. This is the policy document. We developed it together with NECP in full concordance with our legislation. Then it will be followed by a SEGESHE procedure. And when this document is ready and internally agreed between the agencies, the ministries, this document will be subject to public hearing. And we think that in the second half of the year, by autumn, we will be ready to submit this document to the Parliament of Georgia for ratification. And of course, all stakeholders can be involved. And one of the issues, important issues that will be considered at NECP is the target in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of energy consumption and production, in terms of share of renewable energy. You probably know that the EU, together with energy community, is helping Georgia and Eastern Partnership countries to define its targets. Of course, we are going to have our own target, but then we need to negotiate it with the EU and see as to what it should be for 2030 on different directions. The process is ongoing, and we have very fruitful cooperation with the EU energy community. Another big component that we are reforming as well, and many changes are expected there and more to come, is energy efficiency. This is a very important topic for Europe and for us as well. At the moment, according to the law, we are developing secondary legislation, and we have help from different donor organizations, European donor organizations, and international partners to help us to develop the rules for the country, for the state, for people, for consumers. So I will give you just few examples. I will not give you all examples. First of all, we are speaking about construction rules, construction codes and procedures that will be updated. All new buildings and old buildings should be rehabilitated and be energy efficient. And the state undertakes to make sure that some part of buildings are renewed, rehabilitated in concordance with energy efficiency requirements. We introduce the notion of energy audit. We introduce certification. We in NECP also speak about energy efficiency requirements, and we are going to have the schedule by years. And of course, we must mention that there is one law that is on renewable sources and support and incentives to renewable energy. This law suggests that some support mechanisms should be elaborated, adopted for producers and users of renewable energy. In this regard, we have developed already a decree, a special decree. You probably know that in Georgia we had so-called BBA, power purchase agreements in terms of incentives. In this case, we shifted towards so-called premium mechanism, and we apply it to small HPPs and other renewable sources of energy. And we are working in this direction as there are different renewable sources and they need different type of support. So we need time to adjust and to create relevant support mechanisms, sun, wind, biomass, renewable fuel, etc. So 3 more minutes and I will stop. When it comes to the energy efficiency, I would like to highlight several key aspects. First of all, this is speaking about countries' energy security, which needs to be increased, which is not high enough, saying honestly. Since 2010 till 2020, the import of electricity has increased eightfold, which is alarming. And this is happening because alongside economic development of the country, energy consumption increases, and unfortunately, speed of generation lags behind the increased demand. So that's why we need to import gas, import technologies. As of today, 35% of energy production depends on external resource, and unless it changes significantly by 2030, according to our calculations, it will reach 50%, which is too high dependence on external sources, and this is not good for any country. And there is a need to increase optimum use of local resources. I promise that, excuse me, I would like to mention that energy in our country is a political arm, a political leverage, and we need to make conscious steps with regards to energy import. We will unfold this topic a little bit more as to which scenarios have been considered and the finals and what is the acceptable scenario with for us. And there will be questions, I'm sure. But what I would like to say now is that our policy considers development of local resources, first of all, water, wind, and solar energy. We also consider building of dams in order to have reserves of water and to use HPPs with water reserves. And then we will use solar and wind energy and integrate it into the system. Without reserves, it's difficult to do it. And because we have up to 120 megawatts of solar energy at the moment, this is, and we won't be able to do without water reservoirs and dams. We thought about scenarios, we thought about alternatives, and I will tell you later what were the scenarios we have considered. We know there are questions with regards to some specific projects, with regards to some generation sources that we are planning to use, and there are some concerns. We are open for the dialogue. We are open for the open and constructive dialogue. And of course, if during the dialogue it will be deprived of disinformation, myths, trends, and other engagements. Under such circumstances, we will be ready for open and constructive dialogue. I would like to stop here, Mr. Stefan. I would like to fit in my 10 minutes, and I hope I did. And when questions come in, I will try to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Perfect. Thank you for this overview and also tipping to, I think, a lot of important topics. I would really raise also again that everybody who is here in the room, please ask questions via the chat, and also on Facebook, you can ask questions during the speeches. I just want to have one short follow-up question for you. You mentioned the importance of development of local resources. Yeah, also in terms of energy security and the growing demand also of energy. I just want to ask you, if you look to former energy projects, large-scale energy projects which have been implemented in the country, you mentioned hydropower, but I think there are also other areas. What are the lessons learned for the government or also for the ministry from the implementation of these projects? So is there any kind of feedback process where you learn from the problems in the implementation process to get also an improvement in the support of these projects and in implementation?
Of course, there are a number of lessons learned from this previous project. Actually, we haven't implemented a large-scale hydro project recently, but still there are lessons learned. First of all, we realized that this public disclosure discussion process that is required by the legislation, by the Georgian legislation. Well, we have all the time have followed these requirements, but that's not enough. We need to work with local population, with the NGOs, with the public during the implementation of these energy projects much more intensively. And this is one of the main lessons learned, of course. We also learned that we need to, during the process of permitting, we need to study the submitted documents, these environmental and technical and engineering documents more thoroughly, of course, and we need to involve independent experts, and we need to improve the quality of the expertise of these documents. So these are the main two lessons we learned out of the recent developments.
Thank you very much. So I would hand over to Manana, asking her from a civil society perspective, how shall Georgia guarantee the compliance of large-scale energy projects important for energy security in the country with environmental, social, and human rights standards? So how to bridge this, maybe also this critical approach, and what is the current state and how to improve the situation from your perspective?
I would say that despite the picture which was given by the sorry, I will switch to Georgian, I forget.
Yeah, please do so.
The process depicted by the deputy minister looks dynamic, but unfortunately in Georgia today we have what we have, and this is the process when reforming of energy sector is not transparent at all, without any public participation. And the proof of it is what the deputy minister said himself, that by the end of 2021, we are planning to submit climate and energy strategy to the parliament, and before now not a single public organization participated in the process. This was not an open process at all, and I think that it is even too late to start and do it, because especially if we consider direct requirement of energy community in this regard, that consultancies and hearings with stakeholders have to start at the early stage. Now it is too late, I must tell you. And what is happening in the energy sector at the moment? We do see some directions that happen in concordance with energy community requirements since 2017, but at the same time, we see that the problems that the energy sector have, processes are happening in parallel, you know, and even more when we say that we are moving towards energy community. At this point of time, the state concludes contracts like Namakhwani HPP contract, which is a violation of requirements of energy community, including this is a state aid requirement violation. Not a single procedure has been respected, and the law was breached, law on public-private partnership and law on environment. When we speak about that we have learned from experience, and when we say now we've learned as how to plan the processes, first of all, we have not learned something, that transparency is needed at early stages. I would like to remind you that Namakhwani HPP was published only in 2021, beginning of February, while for many years we were demanding that this contract was made public, and it was not. Shuacheva HPP contract is not published. Neskra HPP information just leaked, and the whole society has to contemplate and just imagine things, because they are not involved in preparation of contracts where we people are the third party, where our rights have been neglected, regardless of the frames that are supposed to exist. And when it comes to decision making, the decision making is reverse. They first make decision as to where, on which river, which capacity, what type of HPP will be built, and only after that they start thinking about environmental impact assessment. And this is because Georgia till now does not have comprehensive energy strategy, and actually what is happening today, I have a big problem with something, and I'll tell you with what. These 180 memorandums of understanding that we don't know what these are. How are they going to be integrated? When the clock starts ticking? When is Georgia moving towards European energy management way? And also, one important statement was made. Everyone is ready for the dialogue, the deputy minister said, but without disinformation. And in the lessons learned, then you said that communication, more communication is needed, and as if everything was done in concordance with law. I would like to remind the deputy minister that now when it comes to Namakhwani HES, when in Tzkaltupo they had the only public hearing according to Georgian legislation. On the same day, several NGOs approached both ministries and made a statement that public hearing took place with violations. People were not given a chance to enter the room, literally. Nothing to say about the fact that it was conducted 50 kilometers away from the territory in question. What is happening in Namakhwani today? when the government gives incentives to the company to use police, and using police, the company is building the object. And this is not the first case. We had similar cases in 2019 that ended very badly. This is violation of Georgian constitution. And we are speaking about a bigger problem than only the Ministry of Economy or the Ministry of Environment can resolve, although they are actually the key creators of the problem. And I would like to add one thing. When we speak about energy strategy, we never speak about the issue like Nguri. We never speak about what is happening today in Georgia and as to why our consumption is increasing and why Abkhazian consumption is almost the same as in Tbilisi. And Abkhazia and Svaneti people have literally no electricity. So it is a big question why they have no electricity, while Georgia became third country in the world after US and China on production of cryptocurrency. These questions have to be raised urgently, because not a single energy strategy will help you if it continues like this. And one more thing, it is very important when government makes projections to make sure that these projections are based on real figures. And we do see that the only document that exists till now was a 10-year transfer plan, and this year this plan was changing every year, and somehow it happened so that consumption of the next year never was the same as projection of the previous year, and the whole projections are based on that. We do understand that development of energy sector is important, but at the same time, we do believe that it is very important to diversify it. And you can't have all energy of the country, 85% of which is hydroelectrical. You should not put all eggs in one basket. We also think it's a problem that we are too tied to the two providers. And in this regards, we do not see any strategy of replacement, of substitution. This is a big topic we need to consider, and we are also ready for the dialogue. But this dialogue, first of all, must be evidence-based. And unfortunately, these evidences are the ones that people and NGOs that are working on those topics are hidden from. So this is hidden from us, or we receive information from abroad, and it is not helpful, and it will not resolve the conflict. I'm sorry for speaking long.
Thank you, Manana. I would give first a word to the third speaker, and then I would give the Deputy Minister also a chance to respond to some of the points were made. Yeah, but maybe after both speakers, both other speakers have spoken, and then we take some questions. Manana, one short question, I think, because I think that's also important in this context. We always talk here about misinformation, and also I think the whole issue is very much politicized and polarized. I had several meetings also with European ambassadors on the issue of energy and also of hydropower, and there is always this criticism that also civil society organizations and their representative, they more contribute to the escalation of the communication than to the de-escalation of the communication. How do you see this? So do you think what is the right way to communicate with each other from your perspective? So should there be maybe a different approach, yeah, also in terms of that, because that seems to be the perception also of those who are observing the whole issue.
I would agree. I would agree for 100% that we need to have the dialogue. The problem we see is that when you are, asking from 2017 the contract for the Shuachevi hydropower plant, for example, you know, what is the point, since when we should be still polite and relaxed and not escalation the situation? I am putting this in controversy because what we see, this is not, we can continue that debates if it's like intellectual debates, but then the problem are the communities who are on the ground and who are suffering from the mistakes of the energy planning. Some of them are resettled, some houses are getting destroyed, other people are getting the sinks in the yards. We are seeing the people who are losing their economic income. I can continue the intellectual debates, but that is not the issue. The issue is that we have the people who are directly impacted by the projects, and those people are never addressed, neither by the national government, neither by the international institutions, because part of the problem in our case, it's not only the Ministry of the Economy of Georgia, but also the EBRD and Asian Development Bank and IFC. And actually, we have their own institutions reporting that they contribute to that mess, which is right now in Georgia's energy sector. So this is really, really the issue, that we can have the debates and we should have the debates, but it's not appropriate how the government or the international institutions are speaking with the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Viola, as someone who knows Georgia quite well and is also somehow involved in debates on Georgia, and also with a background of the Green Party in Germany, in the European Parliament, how much from your perspective human rights and participation play a crucial role in the implementation of energy projects? And what are the best practices, and where do you see the main challenges for Georgia with this respect?
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks to the Heinrich Böll Foundation for facilitating this, at least a mini dialogue in terms of that concrete case. Let me start maybe with a little broader picture. Maybe some of you have followed the German political landscape. We recently achieved a landslide victory in Baden-Württemberg. This is one of our states. And we started there in 2012. Why? Because we were on the activist side and fighting against a new train station. At that time, conservative government, state government, were really poorly implementing any kind of a plan for a new a cellar-based or down constructed, however you want to call it, a new pretty large scale train station. And many people in the region of Stuttgart and also many activists were absolutely unhappy, not just with the construction as such, but with the form of communication, how the state government addressed it, as Manana has explained it, to their own people, because they simply ignored that. There was a kind of a fake communication, fake hearing. They weren't happy with the numbers that were given, the amount of money which, in terms of investment, was expected. And so we were, in the end, very successful because we won the first state election and then could implement a German green in the office of the prime minister in Baden-Württemberg. But, and now comes the second point, it is very healthy to rule a state and to rule a country, because then you have to follow this planning process. And of course we could, not of course, that sounds a bit strange, but we could not stop this project. So now we are in the lead, we are in the government, and we have to deal with this. And of course, we lost some of our supporters. We lost some of our constituents. We lost some of our, let's say, former alliance. But nevertheless, we I would say, succeeded in terms of our prognosis. So we have said that the number were fake. They were fake. I think they have tripled now in terms of the potential real revenues. So overall, in everything we have announced and proclaimed in our election campaign in 2012, it has now become true that we were right. But now we are the ones who have to deal in this case. And I think that our minister for traffic, for mobility, has done a very good job to moderate between very radical activists in Baden-Württemberg and now the new government where we Greens are the major part of. So what does it mean? I think you have to really find another strategy for communication. You have to consider you will never satisfy all your population. You will never satisfy your citizen with 100%. But what you have said, Mr. Minister, is absolutely true. If you have a great, ambitious plan, please discuss this with your fellow citizens as soon as possible. And all the implication, what does it mean for which region? How you want to prevent them from the economical risk and their, what Manana has said, their existence of or economical base, which might be in danger. And so I see that the activists might be right, but it looks from the German perspective, of course, very radical. But I mean, we have everyday protests against any kind of a motorway, of a highway, of even wind power plants. I mean, there's a lot of debates going on in Germany every day. Even we have started our energy transition 25 years ago. Or not completely, almost 25 years, in 98, so 23 years ago. But nevertheless, there's a huge, let's say, potential. There's a lot of emotions going on, even in Germany, every day in different levels of the state. And it is not easy to include everyone, but at least we need a proper procedure how people can inform themselves, how much you have to disclose the real facts. What does it mean for the investor? What does it mean for the state? As Manana said, if there is a breach of state aid regarding the, let's say, treaty of the energy community, why don't you disclose all the numbers and show that there isn't a breach in the treaty or the breach in the energy community treaty? And so everything could be, I think, solved if you are ready to communicate in a way which would satisfy at least part of this activist. And I know myself, I mean, I have spent so much time protesting against any kind of roads and any kinds of bigger streets. And I'm so disappointed when I walk through some of our landscape and I know we lost. And I see this big damage in the environment, and I see what kind of crazy projects they have realized why we don't need this. There could have been different solutions. They could have found tunnels. They could have circumvented a special, let's say, environmental sensitive areas. And they didn't do this. And it really made people very, let's say, upset with politics in general. We lost a lot of credibility in institutions, in politics in general, and I can only appeal to everyone who has the, let's say, decision-making power and the responsibility. Think first and really have a comprehensive approach how you're gonna communicate with the citizen in the region, because it doesn't help anybody if you have, let's say, 30% or 40% against you, and then you use the police, police force to shut them up and to silence them. I can understand, and I think that Stefan Meissler has mentioned that part of the activists you will not reach because they are not I mean, not ready for any kind of a dialogue, not ready to compromise. They do not have an own solution. This would be also something where we are, let's say, challenged sometimes, because if you have, let's say, a district, a region which is determined to build wind power plant, and you always have initiatives against that. And then I go there, I talk to them, I ask you, okay, what would be your solution? What is the alternative? Where would you then build up or invest money for wind power plants? And they don't have a solution. They just tell you, not here. That's not the right location. That's not the right place to put a wind power plant. Just look for something else. And I think this is too simple. This doesn't help anybody. If you want to phase out of, in your case, of gas, I mean, the dependency of Russian gas is a security threat. I do recognize that, and I do acknowledge that Georgia needs a different strategy. And both of you were telling us that there is a diversification of energy. I think this is more than urgent, but just to go for large hydropower plants is, of course, a risky game. And I mean, smaller ones might be more harmful for the environment, but if you have, let's say, proper international environment impact assessments, and these are really after according to international environment standards, and this is transparent, and you have a proper dialogue, I think the risk is lower that you have this large extent of protest and of really unsatisfied people. And I do also share, of course, the concern of Manana that, let's say, the consumption is a big question mark. And everyone in the European Union asks, why is the consumption rising in Georgia in the last years that over proportionally? And of course, even this you should explain to the public. Why is it? Who is behind that? Who is benefiting from that? Is it just a small group? Is it just one company? Who is actually consuming all the energy? When I was in this hydropower, which is shared by Abkhazia and Georgia, I was surprised how actually peacefully it was in 2013. It went. But of course, that was thanks to the generous attitude of Georgia. I know that it is very, very difficult, and I wish we could have changed that either Abkhazia pays for it, or you can decide yourself how much, what is the share of the energy you use for Georgia and what goes to Abkhazia. But I know that's a very politicized question. I do fully understand that you look for new solutions because you see the energy dependency on Russia. Okay, I will stop here and maybe ask Stefan for more detailed question on this.
Thank you, Viola. I think very valuable points. Yeah, and I think it's also important to widen the scope and to understand that this is not only that are not only problems Georgia has. Yeah, and especially large scale infrastructure projects. I think they always raise protests, but the question is how you manage them and how you manage the dialogue. I think this is very important. Looking to the time, I would rather give the minister the opportunity just to react, if you want, at this point to some of the points which were made, and then I would open questions also for the auditorium, and you both can also react, yeah, to some of the things which have been said. But I really want to bring in also the auditorium to this topic. So please, short, maybe you can just respond to the point.
Thank you. Just 1, maybe 2 minutes maximum. Yes, just I will touch some of the issues here. Okay.
I would like to answer several questions. First, that any CP public document, I mentioned that it may be submitted in autumn, but Mrs. Manana, I promise that before public hearing in accordance with all laws, it will not be submitted. We are preparing it for the meetings to make it available for public hearings, and you and others will have a chance to participate in discussion of this important document. There will be no limitations. Several times Namakhwani HPP was mentioned, and the processes around the HPP and issuance of licenses with violations. It's your position. We don't agree that it was with violations. We can say that all legal requirements have been met. You have mentioned there was no public hearing, public hearing was not in concordance with rules and regulations. There were 2 hearings, I must mention, not 1. I would like to highlight it, and I was present in both meetings. There were many people in October, and there were no limitations to say what they think. These are topics of the Ministry of Environment, but I still thought it was necessary to clarify with regards to Namakhwani contract that it was not published. I can't agree with you here, because whoever requested, we gave this contract. This is what I wanted to say. And I agree that cryptocurrency in Georgia is not controlled. In Abkhazia is not under control, but state is making some steps not to finance it from our side, you know. And this year, from April, we have not submitted more from other systems, and it is caused by repairs of Nguri, but in future, in the years to come, we will make sure not to subsidize cryptocurrency fishing farming in Abkhazia. When it comes to projections, our projections, we have a lot of communication with international donors, and we use their analytical software, and we use Lexos methodology. We have purchased it 2 years ago, and these projects on consumption, etc., are these are based on research and hard work. And finally, I would like to add, we depend on 2 suppliers. Probably you meant import, yes? You meant probably Russia and Azerbaijan. There is a 3rd provider, Turkey. This year in the winter, we have increased the 3 and 4 folds import to have diversification. Unfortunately, we don't have other neighbors, and we have a plan to connect to Romania, to Black Sea countries with the cable on the bottom of Black Sea. This is a very ambitious project, but we've been discussing it, and the government is raising this idea, and we hope to connect with EU countries.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I would now do 2 rounds of questions. Auditorium, and Manana, you can then also, if you want to react to some of the points, just do it first round. Yeah, I just don't want to, I would also give this opportunity, and I don't know, we need to, yeah, so I think it's important to make some points, but yeah, so I would ask my colleague, Tama Antitse, to maybe to read out 5 questions for the first round.
მოგესალმებით. უამრავი კითხვა მოდის და რა თქმა უნდა ყველას ალბათ დღეს ვერ გავაშყერებ, თუმცა შევეცადე რომ რაღაცნაირად დამეჯგუფებინა თემატურად ეს კითხვები და პირველი კითხვა მიემართება ბატონ დავითს. როგორია ენერგეტიკის უსაფრთხოების თქვენეული სახელმწიფოს
At the moment, the translation is not working.
Sorry. So the first question is what is energy security and your strategy, is it in concordance with each other? So this is the question, the strategy and the situation. And second, what is fiscal, monetary, and economic income of energy? What stays in the state budget? And about big projects. In case of big projects, do you do feasibility study of those projects? And third question is about Bitcoins, and you have answered them somehow, but I will still read it. Bitcoin farming, does it contribute to economic growth of Georgia or not? And finally, what is the volume of solar and wind energy that you can integrate in the system? What are the researches to support it? Do you consider hybrid schemes, air and wind and water, etc.? So this is the first round, I'd say.
Thank you. I think most of the questions are to the Deputy Minister. So maybe you start off and the other two have the chance also to react. And just to make the first question more precise, how do you define energy security? What does it mean for you? I think that's an important question also, because it has different layers. But I think you got also the other questions. So maybe you start off and then the other two have also the chance to add something.
Thank you very much for the questions. I will start with the first question, of course. Let us look at Europe's example. Europe has one single electro system, and all countries are connected to this community. But at the same time, all countries of Europe are obliged, in concordance with EU requirements, to have ability to satisfy 100% of its demand, and in case be able to satisfy 100% of its demand. Europe is big, one big electro system, and if one country has zero generation, others will help, but the requirement of EU is that everyone has 100% generation infrastructure. So about Georgia, you know that in Georgia we have a difficult region, and some neighbors of ours. Energy is a political leverage of influencing its neighbors, and we have many examples. And we are saying that our definition of energy security is that Georgia should not be dependent on external sources for more than 10 or 15%. We understand that Georgia is not rich in oil or gas like its neighbors in the region. We know that we will never be able to satisfy 100% of our needs from our local resources. Nevertheless, as much as possible, this has to be used to make sure that Georgia does not import more than 10-15% of electricity or gas to produce electricity. So 10-15% is the conscious, reasonable. So this is one. Second question. With regards to the second question, solar and wind integration, whether this is possible, and what are the researches in support of it. As I have mentioned initially, up to 500 megawatts of wind is possible, and up to 120 megawatts integration of solar. This is possible. So this is not a rule of thumb. No, this is calculations made by German company Silent. And if it's not public, I don't know. No, it's not. Manana is nodding her head. It's not. So actually, executive summary of the document must be available for everyone. And if anyone's interested, please contact me and I will share the report of this on this document. But the key is that we should not stop on that 500 megawatts and 120 megawatts. We have to create reserves, and you can install batteries for wind and solar, but it is much more expensive. And I'm sorry. I can give an example and compare as to what the pricing is. Let us look at Namajuani project, if you like, 493 megawatt to produce same electricity through solar. You need to have 1,150 megawatt. In addition, you have to have batteries that are more expensive than these 1,150 megawatt worth of panels. So you need to compare things before you make decisions. This is what I'm saying. And I have a feeling that it is believed that we don't do analysis, we don't do research, and our decisions are not evidence-based, but I would like to assure you it's not true. And the fact that we need dams in order to integrate solar and wind energy, it is absolute truth. When Namajuani is built, we will be able to increase integration by 700 megawatts for wind and, well, 700, 800 solar and wind together. If we don't build Namajuani, we will have to build batteries, which is much more expensive per unit of energy compared to construction of a big HPP. Next question about Bitcoins. I think I spoke about it, and Abkhazia and the rest of Georgia outside Abkhazia, it was only in Svaneti region, but for 2 or 3 months now, we installed meters, electricity meters, and we have our balance transformers and we install meters, and consumption decreases. Abkhazia is a big problem. And we said already that we are using all tools to somehow, well, actually we can't step in, that's it. And the benefit from those projects from Bitcoin, we can extrapolate. In addition to Namajuani, $500 million will be spent in Georgia on different services, and it will be for direct foreign investment. In addition, it will be employment, and the company will pay 30 million lari in the form of taxes, and it will be possible after Namajuani is built to integrate solar and wind stations during the peak mode. This imported energy is for the MIG, it's 7.8 cents. After this project is built, we will have a possibility to have cheaper energy for the population and not to push tariffs. This HPP will give us a possibility in official cases to have flexible energy system and during different fluctuations be able to manage the system without discomfort to customers. This HPP is built for 100 years, and investment is a one-time investment, and HPP will function for 100 years. And I can continue if you like, but I think we are running out of time.
Yeah,
and
let's maybe make a stop here and also give the others the opportunity, and then there will be a second round. You can also add some points. Maybe Manana, you are the next to react.
Yeah, maybe I will start with reaction with the button minister.
I would like to answer to the deputy minister. The thing is that Namajuani contract is closed. Officially, we have not received it yet. You lose our letter, we send you a letter. I understand you give information to everyone except us, except Green Alternative. So also Shuachevi contract. I catch you on your word. Please give it to us, share it with us. So, and this is important for us to have those contracts, because when we speak about feasibility study, unfortunately, is not covered by any of impact assessment, while it has to be an integral part of environmental assessment. And from those contracts, you could not tell us about the benefit of Namajuani, but at the same time, the contract that we would like to look at shows a different picture, including tax breaks for them. Well, I'm not arguing with you. I'm just asking questions. You have said that solar batteries are more expensive and Namajuani is cheaper. It sounds great, but it would be good if we could see it in figures, in models, and afterwards people will not have questions. And the key problem is there, nevertheless, when a contract is given to us, for example, and we mentioned that it is not in concordance with the state aid of energy community. And when we say it, why you keep saying that we come up with myths and we are agents of Russia and there is defamation campaigns against us, while when EMC wrote a research on the contract, there was an answer to their press release and not to the content that they gave. So this is what creates the biggest problem, including a bad quality of environmental assessment. We have many examples of very bad environmental assessments that later we had to pay lives of people for that. We have Diariali with 8 deaths. We have Shuachevi, where tunnels just crashed down. They were telling everything is fine, and now they keep quiet. Yeah, we could not hear their voices anymore. Anyone punished? Whose fault is it? People hear it. People want to have the feedback. And this is the biggest problem, and not that we are creating misinformation and creating myths. Okay, give us the feasibility study on Namajuani, make it public, please, because this is the requirement of law. Please publish feasibility studies on all HPPs. This is requirement of law.
Thank you, Manana. Viola,
I know I've seen the 2 questions in the chat.
I read them. I just read them out. Viola,
no, I can easily. That takes too long.
They are also translated into Georgian for the Facebook auditorium.
Yeah, but I can. That takes too long, to be honest. Okay. Let me just answer because they are very closely linked. Mr. Barry asked me and said it is not appropriate that I compare a new construction of a railway station in Germany with this huge hydropower plant. That's surely absolutely not okay. And I didn't want to have a comparison in terms of negative environmental impact. Of course, I would never ever dare to say that this is comparable. But what my point was, it was poorly, very, very poorly communicated. And a very solid German conservative government failed over that. And it was for the first time possible for a Green Party to concur successfully in a state and now face the situation that we are in power already for more or almost 10 years. So actually, it was an appeal to the activists to finally get their act together, found a party and run. So at least try to make some political power out of it, make something constructive. and show to the people that you would be able to do it better, and to try to found a political force and come out with new solutions, with alternatives, and show that, and this is the second question I think Manuka Gvilala has asked from the environmental assessment, is hydropower still part of the, let's say, renewable diversity strategy? I would say yes, but not that particular case what we are talking about now, because this is very, very and highly critical. I do share all the concerns which Manana has mentioned so far. I'm absolutely on her side. But in general, I would not reject all hydropower plants, because if we want to phase out, and in our case, it's also nuclear, but if we want to phase out of all fossil fuels powered energy, I mean, this means gas, this means coal, oil, and nuclear. I mean, we have to explain to our citizens how we're going to substitute this. Energy efficiency is important, and that's what the minister has said. It's good that you invest first into energy and energy reduction, but this would not be enough, especially in a country such as Georgia, which has a huge industrial sector, and also in Germany. So we have to consider there will be negative environmental impacts. And also we Greens in Europe, in Germany, have to explain to our citizens what is better, phasing out of coal or building new wind power plants or solar, and also kind of destroying, of course, the landscape. I mean, have you followed the huge protest against new grids in Germany? It's awful, it's terrible. And nevertheless, we have to do it, because if we want to harvest the wind energy in offshore, then we need to transfer. We need to bring this to this big metropolitan areas where the consumption is, and that needs new grids. And nobody's in favor of this. That's a huge struggle already for more than 5 or 6 years. So I know the situation very well. I'm not defending this particular hydropower project, not at all. But I'm saying I'm not generally against it. If we have a proper assessment, and if this is proceeded done along according to international standard, of course we still would need it. Yes, because otherwise we cannot phase out of all the fossils, but not in the way which is now done and so far proceeded from the Georgian government. That's for sure.
Okay. Thank you. I think it is a point, your point is very valuable, I think, but it's also important to look at the specific projects, yeah, in, for instance, a seismic active region, yeah, where you have to think about, so what does the feasibility study say, yeah, so, but I agree with you, yeah, so I think we sometimes have to do also projects which damage, but which bring other benefits, but then it's the question how they are done, and then again, it's also a question, on these very specific cases, is this really the right location, yeah, to build a hydropower station? So Taco, maybe we do a second round. We still have 15 minutes left. Let's say 3 or 4 questions.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of questions flowing in, and again, we can't read all of them, but there are some questions that we can't avoid. There are many questions about Namajuani contract, and Mrs. Manana and Mr. David, if you could somehow react and actually speak about existing contract and the conditions that we have between the state and private company. What is the benefit for the country? And if you could say a few words around it, because there are many questions on this topic. And also there are several questions, Mr. David, on rehabilitation of existing hydropower plants. And also there are several questions on who. You mentioned employment of people during the construction. And if you have looked at the real picture, because there is an opinion that we do not have qualified labor and local people will not be employed anyway there. and big constructions don't employ local people. And this is the key group of questions, and I don't think we will have more time for questions.
Okay. Maybe Manana starts this time with answering, and then
ნამახვანის კონტრაქტი ნამდვილად ძალიან რთული
yes, Namakhwani contract is very difficult contract. And actually, for the first time, I have seen the contract that guarantees everything. When I saw Neskra, I thought I will never be surprised again, but I'm surprised again. And we have secured the risks that may be connected in case of the bankruptcy of the company. And this is a big problem, I think, because if we are living in a free market and we are appealing to the free market, you should not safeguard all the risks for the company and insure all the risks for the company. And I would like to focus your attention to one item on the contract, which is the state's obligations that the state should build in additional substation and also make a connecting line with Turkey and to create additional reserve for Namakhwani HPP. And this project is an obligation of the state, by the way. And for that, the government of Georgia has approached the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and took a loan. And we have very high external debt compared to our GDP. And that's why I think that such, well, sorry, this is one thing. I can speak a lot about this contract, including employment issue, which is not specifically stipulated. And in other contracts, there was a provision that at least 70% of local labor force should be employed. Or when it was about Shuachevi, there were training and retraining centers for people who had to work there. And in this case, the company does not have this obligation. There is another problem, and Mr. Stefan spoke about it. The risks that may arise if there is no water. If there is no water in the river, we are guaranteeing against those risks from two sides. On one hand, we say if there is a deficit, we will fill it in. And on the other hand, we give them Tchenis-Tzchali River and the right to use Tchenis-Tzchali River, which will reflect badly, very badly on Lajanuri HPP. And we may have losses there as well. So these are the problems that are there in the contract, and the contract must be discussed. And many professionals have many comments on those contracts, and it can't happen so that we could not understand who was the responsible party from the state. We want to know who this person is, who drafted the contract. We only saw the signatories. So it is very important that when we have contracts secured and insured and safeguarded by the state, and state will be the one who will lose. And there are financial risks there, and World Bank and IMF verified and confirmed it. So it is important to revise the contract as soon as possible. Otherwise, there will be big problems. There are big problems, in fact, and I don't even think I have covered all of them. There are many more problems in this contract.
Okay, thank you very much, Tvalabeishvili. Maybe you also.
Just, my name is David. You don't need to repeat my longest second name, David.
David, okay. Thank you very much, David. And maybe you add also this question on rehabilitation of existing hydropower station. I think that would be also.
Yes, I will answer this question, but I will start with the contract because I was talking about needs. I was talking about I'll switch to Georgian, sorry.
Yeah, please.
In the beginning of my speech, I was speaking about disinformation, bias. Mrs. Manana, I would kindly ask you to read the document yourself and what you have listed, really think if it is correct. I will give you an example. Tax break. Namajuani has tax breaks. It's not true. Maybe you meant EMS. Miss Manana, let me finish and then you can comment. It was in EMS research, and I will tell you what it means. The project is free of taxes. It's not true, they pay taxes. And it's there that the license for inert materials, they don't have to participate in the auction. This is the exemption only. Second, it says if there will be no water, the government of Georgia will fill in this deficit. It's not true. I am telling you it's not true. And it says that in 1970, the well was made through which water from Tkhenisrali was entering Rioni to have Alajani HPP functioning, and even more in the tender conditions when it was tendered in 2015. Sorry, we can't hear him. Okay, that this water. Okay, the investor asked the question if what was happening before, the transfer of Tkhenisrali to Rioni to maintain only this level. And we are not guaranteeing that water will be there and water deficit will be filled in. Its lie. Also, the lie is that this state is giving insurance against bankruptcy. Please read this contract yourself and there will be less myths. When it comes to the obligation to build a new transmission line, yes, we do it and we will evacuate electricity when HPP is built. Yes, we spend money on that, but there was another option that this could have been given to the investor, to anchor company, but in this case, it will be reflected in the tariff. In the tariff, which we would have to pay for the electricity, and it would be not 6.2, but higher. So this is the thing, please take into account. When it comes to employment, it does not say in the contract as to what should be the percentage of local labor employed, but I would like to assure you that if it is necessary, we can add it to the contract. And according to our request, and the company would not want to bring foreigners and pay more for labor. They are also interested to employ local labor, but if it is a problem, we can, for example, add it to the contract. And Mrs. Manana, I would like to add, you were involved in Baku Ceyhan project, I remember, and you mentioned that this contract like Namajuani, you have never seen anything like that, but probably you saw Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan contract. I'm not saying it is worse, but it was because in the beginning of 90s of the last century, Georgia had different risks and investor requested more for making a huge investment. Situation has changed today in the country. Situation is much better off today. But even under current circumstances, when investor comes with big investments and big investment is made, they ask for guarantees. And this is not the only contract with guarantees, but these requirements are much softer compared to Baku Ceyhan. And when it comes to Mr. Stefan's comment with regards to rehabilitation of existing HPP, yes, some HPPs can be rehabilitated and it will increase generation by a certain percentage, but but as a result of rehabilitation, we will increase only by a low percent. Generation will not increase, but as Mrs. Cramon mentioned, it will not change the situation, and it will be deceiving your own self to believe that if we rehabilitate existing HPPs, our energy security will increase. Thank you.
Viola, you want to have maybe short comment?
I mean, I know that the situation is very polarized, and maybe after we could make it possible that the opposition and the GD found in more or less, hopefully, sustainable agreement 2 or 3 nights ago. I also hope that at some point, I don't know how at that moment, we will find any kind of a good compromise which satisfied maybe not everyone, but the majority. How this could look like, I don't know. But I see this, as many people have mentioned now, as a very critical point. I see it was already planned, I think, to Soviet times. So it's not just, let's say, the start or the idea or the concept of the current government. It has been a long history on this, but it doesn't make it better. And we really should think what Manana said, have we learned from the past? Obviously not. And this is something which matters. How can we improve, I mean, the future projects? If you are planning to have more HPP projects, and what do we make out of this one? How much transparency can you allow to happen? What does it mean to, I mean, prolong the entire planning process? As I said, I'm neither an expert on this particular project nor on, I've just looked it up, let's say, fish ladders or any, let's say, specific issues you would need to improve this and to upgrade this particular project so it could be compliant with international environmental standards. So for me, it is a interesting but very, very difficult and very delicate situation. I'm very much restricted, or we all restricted with the travel restrictions so far, but I do promise, and I had hoped I could have done it before, to travel to the region, speak to people, have a look at this, and also become much more familiar with this particular case. And then I could also make more public statements, because so far I'm very much an outsider and it's very hard for me to have a final judgment or assessment on this. But thanks a lot, Stefan, for hosting this very interesting debate.
Thank you. Just a couple of final words. First of all, I want to thank the speakers. I think it's a small contribution, yeah, to a dialogue, and I think it is important that that both sides, or how you want to call it, I think, meet and talk. I heard today a lot about also disinformation and false information, yeah, and I think this kind of blaming also of the other side. And I think the problem is also that there is a lack of information. Yeah, so I think there is a need to make not only to write the deputy minister, who is really very helpful person. Yeah, then he sends maybe the contracts, but it would be good also to publish this, that there are not maybe also wrong information around. I think that's maybe also a problem. Yeah, so I think to have a strategy also for communication in terms not how to say it, not to manipulate maybe communication, but in terms of to contribute to a transparent discussion and give the information. Yeah, I think that's very crucial. But I really want to thank all three speakers that they took this challenge, yeah, today. And that I think we had a very good discussion here, and I think it was very useful also for all sides. I want to thank also the auditorium for the questions participating in this event. Yeah, and I think we will go on with this kind of dialogue. Yeah, I think this is This is one of the projects. This is a crucial project, and I really take also the minister very very clear that you are willing also for this kind of dialogue. I'm very happy about this. Yeah, and I also think the other side will be also here willing to discuss. So thank you very much.